Every day literally is different. Of course I do certain things that are fixed, certain fixed meetings when I meet my team, board meetings, meet external partners, but literally every day is different, and that's one of the things I love about the job.
And so thinking about that day, that role, the job, then what would you see as being the biggest challenges that you face in that day-to-day role?
Okay, biggest challenges I think at the moment for the organisational are there's lots of changes going on in the health service, and we need to work ever closer with partners, and sometimes the incentives aren't there for all partners to come together. People put organisations before patients, whereas I'm very clear that our role is to do what's best for the patients, not just within the time they're in this organisation, but through their whole pathway of care. So that can be a challenge. On a personal level, I don't get to spend as much time at the front line as I'd like. So I always look to do as much of that as I possibly can. But I do enjoy the role. And I think the other big challenge at the moment is around politics. The NHS is a big political football, as everybody knows, no more so the current time we're leading up to general election. So having to deal with that internally and externally is quite difficult at times.
You mentioned partners there. When you talk about partners in this context, who would those people be?
Lots of different partners. I mean, when I talked about care pathways, obviously we're looking at community health partners, social care, voluntary sector, but also then it's partners in the provision of care. So obviously we've got partners through our PFI, whether they be ISS, Skanska, Vinci, GE for equipment, working with other diagnostics partners and all different partners in doing the best possible care. But what I was thinking was really about across the pathways of care.
And when it comes down to those challenges and those are there key deliverables that that you would have to meet on a day-to-day basis for the trust? What are the big things, the big ticket items, if you like, that keep you awake at night? What would they be?
One of the things that is true, recent research said that within the public sector in the UK, acute hospitals are the most performance managed organisations. So through our regulator, which is Trust Development Authority, we work on behalf of the Department of Health. We're regularly monitored on over 300 targets. So we're very well measured and monitored. And on top of that, of course, is what our patients think of us, which is very important to us. So we measure all those things. In terms of what keeps us awake, I mean, I'm not the sort that is awake at night, but the big ticket items that are on our agenda at the moment, like lots of hospitals, are flow through a hospital. Are people in front of the right professionals at the right time to give them the best care? And so that's classically monitored by the 95% target through the emergency department. Finances are a major challenge in the NHS at the moment. So they're things that are really coming to the forefront, as well as all the other things that are important around infection control, patient experience, how long people wait for elective care, etc.
And how do you cascade those targets at kind of your level? How do those get cascaded down through the hospital to the front line, if you like?
Okay. I suppose like lots of big organisations, we have a classic pyramid of information. So what do we need to know at the board? What are the key performance indicators? And then how do they sort of like filter down to what's important to the people on the front line? I think one of the classic examples there is, I think about the big challenge around flow I talked about, which the government measures at 95% targets. That's 95% of people should be either admitted, discharged or treated within A&E. But actually it's a measure of the flow through a hospital. So we've broken that down into metrics at 5 different stages of a patient journey. And each area is then measured within that and performance managed on that basis. So whether that be if it's the end of their journey, how quick they're discharged, do they get their take-out drugs on time, quickly, how many discharges happen before midday at the end. So it's all around patient care and the different stages of that patient journey, because we know if we get all that right, then the top target for 95% is achieved at the board level. So we do that across this whole range of targets.
Right. And you mentioned patient satisfaction there as being another one. Is that something that's systematically measured as part of your ongoing metrics?
Yeah, absolutely. Patient satisfaction is difficult to measure, but we do it in many different ways. Every morning I wake up, as well as my executive directors, to have real-time feedback on an internet-based feedback system we've got called Impressions. So that tells us where a patient's been in, if they filled this out. We also have it paper-based, but the internet comes back, telling us what they think about good, bad or indifferent. So we look at that. That's farmed out to different areas. So we look at that. There's the government, what's called now Net Promoter It used to be friends and family tests. Obviously, would you recommend this organisation to be a place to be cared in if you had to have care? We also then monitor complaints. Are there any trends in that? And we also have like a patients council and just ask people, and I often have listening events saying, what do patients think about us? But it's not just patients, it's also carers, visitors, everybody who interacts with UHCW, what do they think about us, what's their experience, and we try to bring that through, and we're doing that as part of our organisation development programme.
One thing we've noticed is the patient focus in what came through in everything that those people said. You could really feel that the real focus on the patient. And that was very much a sort of a consistent thread, and that the patient was at the centre of all things. And you touched on it there. But are there specific things you're doing here to sort of make that different, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a mission statement as an organisation since 2009, which is well embedded. So that's care, achieve and innovate. And very clear at the front of everything we do is patient care. And one of the things then we try to expand that. So as a vision organisation, it's going to be a national international leader in healthcare. To help us do that, 13 months ago nearly, we launched a new organisation development programme called Together Towards World Class. 5 streams of work. The first one very clearly is world class experience. So what does it feel like if the patient's absolutely always at the centre of attention? Every decision is made about the patient first. You listen to that patient, and then you make the right decisions and you give them the best care. And very clearly, it doesn't matter whether you're a frontline clinician, clinical support or a non-clinician, you have a role in giving excellent patient care and great patient experience. So we talk about that all the time in everything we do. I think it's fair to say parts of the health service historically have built themselves around professional needs and what suits the professional, but it shouldn't be. It's the patient first and foremost.
What would you say the most rewarding parts of your job?
Okay, it's times like I did only yesterday where I get to spend time on the front line and actually see what we do on a day-to-day basis, because we do some fantastic care. We do some world-class care. We can get things better, but also you see that by being there as well. So yesterday I did a 4-hour period in the emergency department. I try and get in and around all the frontline services. I don't do enough of it, and that's when I go back to challenging my role. That's something I'd like to do more. But also then it's actually speaking to patients and getting feedback is really important as well. That's the favourite bits.
And I suppose then linked to that, then thinking about all the things that happen on a day-to-day basis. If you had the magic wand, and you could make 1 or 2 things different, what would you do with that magic wand?
Can I pick one internal, one external?
Yeah, please.
Okay, the internal thing is we're a big, large organisation and complex. And sometimes I see some fantastic things happening in one part of the organisation that aren't replicated across the whole, just because of how complex this organisation is. That magic wand would mean we'd do everything brilliant everywhere, where we've learnt to be good. Externally, it goes back to my earlier point. We and I spend far too much time talking to people about making things better rather than getting it better quicker for the patients. And that's a lot to do with the way the NHS is structured, local authorities are structured, and the incorrect and inconsistent financial incentives.
And what about people like us, vendors, like GE Healthcare?
Yep.
What could we do to help you better, to help you achieve those goals?
Okay, well if I I'm not just come talking to you, but GE, we've obviously worked with a long time. I think one of the key things we've developed over time is that GE, how could I put this, they're not just here to sell us boxes. It's what does that box mean and how can we use that box of equipment to give better patient care and then develop it as we go along. What are our needs, what can you supply us with, and how can that fit into what we need to do? And have those discussions. I, as a chief executive, have no problems working with the private sector anyway in the health service. Recognising the private sector needs to make a profit, but that's good and fine as long as they're helping me give better patient care for value for money.